Cheers.
Oh, you want to? All right, I'll have to use my protein shake.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Here we go.
We're at it. All right, what are we doing?
Stuff.
I love stuff.
Yeah, I know you do. We were supposed to look at each other here, you said, though.
Oh,
That's what you
see
said.
me, Tara, see me.
How about we just dive into clips this morning?
Hold on, Jon and Tara podcast.
Jon and Tara podcast.
Jon, Tara podcast, and we have a chair in back for you if you
Yeah.
want to join us. Right back there, back there.
That's what I thought is
It
weird.
does have a kitty bed on it right now, but
Yeah, and probably a lot of kitty fur.
oh, there's that. So,
So
don't
just
wear
heads
black.
up. Or white, or any
So
other color.
like and subscribe, share with your friends for everyone to enjoy. If we bring anything to the table that intrigues you, or if you have any questions or want us to comment on something, feel free to send it in.
It's at Tara Bachland or at Jon Bachland. John's the complaints and business opportunity department. All kudos, please send to me.
Compliments, happy
Yeah.
happy face
Or-
emojis.
Suggested videos that we could comment on. Nothing indecent, please. But yeah, we've been having fun commenting on what's going on in this crazy world.
Oh, we're not commenting about the whole world. Mostly, okay, first of all, we've been married 24 years. It is marriage, business together, how to run business and be married, how to get along with a entrepreneurial spouse, that type of stuff, 99%. We're not big on politics. We're not big on talking politics. I mean, we're not real big on politics, but we're not big on talking about it. So I would comment if somebody asked a question, though. And so would Tara. But Tara is so conservative, she won't share her opinions with you. So there you go.
There you go.
All right. So you wanted to do a clip right away.
Let's just dive into it.
Dive into a clip.
Yeah. I think
Okay.
you found some good ones.
You think so?
Yeah, because I think this will spin off.
All right. Should we start with this one?
No, I think the previous one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nobody with an ounce of masculinity in their body. Nobody with an ounce of dignity or respect in their body strands their girlfriend or their wife, ever.
You're
It's
not
cowardly, childish behavior. No man with any sort of masculinity, any sort of strength or dignity or responsibility takes all the money out of the account and says, you got to go through me, as though you're some kind of overlord or her dad. It's a cowardly, childish behavior.
We heard
Oh, so
you.
this is like overhearing at the coffee shop, like someone talking about a situation. You don't know the whole scenario.
We don't know all the context, but you
Right.
heard the guy laugh in the background, a little nervous chuckle.
Yeah. Yeah, because I can imagine there would be a few scenarios where, and this is me, the woman speaking, where like I'd even be like, you don't have access.
What
So
would one simple scenario be for you?
If you're gambling away money
Me?
and this would be.
Are you kidding me? You would never have access to the money. How would you take it away?
Well, right. But it seems like when people have vices, they're not always well planned like that.
Yeah. Well, we can bring up a little scenario about being in business. So when we first got together, I did control the money. I did have a business account and we had a personal account. And I had been running business for many, many years before we met. And so we got married. You were relatively inexperienced in business and life. You had jobs, but your family was a blue collar family. They weren't entrepreneurial. They had jobs, and I grew up in an entrepreneurial family per se. My grandfather was a business owner. My uncle was a business owner, my dad's brother. And then my dad became a business owner when I was 18 years old. And I had businesses all through high school. I had jobs and side businesses. And even when I was a little kid, I would shovel and mow lawns and that kind of stuff. So understanding the expenses that go with business. And then when we got together, we were in a multi-level business together and we did very well. And you didn't really probably ask much about the money at that point. When I started my machine shop, because I have a background in machining, we were doing better. And so we were moving into a range in our relationship where you did ask for more things. We were looking at houses, we were looking, I have owned 2 homes, and you lived in one of those homes with me. We owned a home together out in Wisconsin, out in Scone. And so when I started my business, it started small, but I did really well very quickly. And so the expenses went up very quickly because I started buying capital equipment. And for most people that won't understand maybe capital equipment, that's just in a business, that's your expenses of the major pieces of equipment that you need to operate your business. And in machining, those pieces of equipment can weigh up to 40,000 pounds, 50,000 pounds. My machines were in the range of 12 to 22,000 pounds roughly. And so those machines are rather expensive. Those machines are anywhere from, $65 to 6.5 million, $65,000 to 6.5 million. My most expensive machine has been right around 750,000. And then there's multiple machines in the shop. So the level of expenditures in a business like that would make most people fall out of their chair, because you're literally, your monthly payments can get up to, my highest monthly payments were about $64,000. And so that's pretty extreme for most people. Because
Was that just machine payments or was that also payroll?
No, that's just machine payments.
Right.
And so, that's like you could buy a neighborhood with that much money every month.
What do you mean? Like,
Well, if you had, let's say you had a $2,000 a month house payment, you could buy 30 homes.
okay, you could make payments on 30 homes.
You could
in a
make
neighborhood.
payments on 30 homes. Yeah. Well, everybody says when they go to the bank and sign a mortgage, they say they bought a house, right? So I'm just using the common vernacular that everybody would think. So, and to support that level of, and it wasn't always that high, but to support the level of expenditure and weekly outgo, monthly outgo, you need a lot of cash flow. And the cash flow in most businesses would make people think that the business owner is very wealthy. And so it takes time. And you were going through a lot of family issues. There was a lot of things in our life that were tumultuous outside of us. And we had a very great marriage. And together, we obviously married 24 years. We still have a very great marriage. And it's gotten better in my eyes. We could talk about that with you. But I did not expose you to the business side or the money, and I would put money in the personal account, and some weeks I wouldn't, because there were some weeks where my payroll took everything and then I was waiting on payments. So some weeks, even when I had 18 guys, something that most people don't know about businesses, I had 18 guys working for me, and I had all those machine payments, and I would have $1,000 left in my business account at the end of the week. And I knew I had money coming in, receivables, and because you're on generally a 30-day pay cycle with your customers, you finish the job, give it to them, they pay you in 30 days. So as a small business owner, you're supporting a lot of debt also, a customer's debt. You're supporting a lot of credit, right? You've given them credit.
If you're a business that is paid on term, if you're retail, you are doing that as well, because you're buying the product.
Inventory.
You have inventory, yeah. So, yeah, I guess in a lot of scenarios you are doing that.
I wasn't a business that had inventory per se, because we made custom, and still do make custom equipment, custom parts.
But your inventory is still in, hypothetically, the labor, the wages that you're paying the people, and
But they don't call it inventory.
no, of course not. No, it's cost of goods.
Yeah.
So, but you are expending that money for weeks.
So when Dr. John said that, we both identified that right away, that this could be a topic that we could talk about.
And there's so many.
But our situation was different. I wasn't straining you, cutting you off. When we had decent cash flow, our lifestyle went up, and when we didn't, our lifestyle went down. And it was very dynamic. So feel free to chime in.
Well, I think that's very helpful for the business side of things, and so we could comment on both ends, where if you're in, let's say, a standard household where you're both working jobs, that's very different than if one or both is an entrepreneur and you have that kind of cash flow as an entrepreneur, especially as you're starting out. It's very difficult. And yes, I didn't understand the entrepreneurial side, although I think I have a natural knack for figuring out systems, flows, numbers. And if you had brought me in, I probably would have distracted me well enough from the family crap also that was going on. Excuse my language, but that was really mild for what I can say about it. But while it would have been stressful, it would have been a different kind of stress, and or probably in hindsight, I probably should have gotten a part-time job or something that, no, well, you don't think so, but hindsight's 2020 also. But so I guess you can go in two different directions, but let's just maybe address the scenario and assume it's more of a standard situation where one or both is working a job. And I don't know, maybe she stays home. Boy, there's so much you could just hypothesize about this. But I think there are a handful of scenarios. I mean, you've told me about guys that and the wives are charging up the credit cards. And I'm like, why do they even get a credit card? Or you cap it off at a certain amount, right? Because you can't keep charging a credit card usually after, maybe you can get an extra $100 or something, but you just say, this is our budget. You come together as a couple and this is our budget. And if you go beyond that, you're putting us in detriment. And I could see a scenario if a woman, in this case, I'm just, speaking as a woman, you are not actually being a partner to your husband, and a partner to your marriage, really, is you're being an advocate of your marriage and your life and your future. If you're robbing from your future by overspending, and to the degree that I'm going to give this guy the benefit of the doubt, even though Dr. John's chiding him, it's probably not a healthy scenario, but I'm going to say I think there are a few scenarios where I'd be like, you're cut off.
Yeah.
And because otherwise you're basically divorced, right? I mean, if you're not working together for your current health and well-being and your future, you're basically acting divorced. And so I think that a couple needs to come together and decide, okay, this is, and when you own a business, when you're an entrepreneur, that's even more difficult because you don't have a steady income, you don't have a steady flow. And so you have to be like, this is how much I'm putting in the account right now, but this plan on this lasting us 4 weeks or 4 months. And you really have to have that agreement be extra strong.
Yeah. So while you were talking there, I wrote down no credit because you said credit card. The funny thing is, I didn't have any credit. So
yeah, we were working off of debit cards and cash.
Yeah. Hold on, I just got to answer this. But I didn't have any credit at all. So I had zero credit. You remember when we went in for me to get a car loan, and they're like, you don't show anything. You don't show any credit. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's because I use cash for everything.
Yeah.
And so if my wife had asked for a credit card, I wouldn't have been able to get her a credit card, which is really, I'm a secured card maybe, but that's really funny in my mind, because I was a cash business also, not cash, but I paid for things when I bought them. Instead of, I talked about machine payments, but I had lots of machines that I owned. I had lots of things that I owned. If I went and bought a car, I would buy it for cash. If I bought a motorcycle, I'd buy it for cash.
Or is business credit, which is different than personal credit.
A business credit, yeah, I could get $1 million worth of machines, but I couldn't go buy a suburban vehicle, a car, an SUV, which is hilarious to me. So yeah.
Did you say you're
No, I was just going to answer my brother quick, but
okay? So we're keeping on going. So
yeah.
I think because Dr. John was chiding him, it was probably more an issue where this guy had a trust issue. Maybe not where I'm going to assume his wife was doing something like that, like charging up credit cards, or even if it's, just spending out of the bank account. I assume that since he was getting chided, that it was more like this guy ultimately it comes down to trust.
Oh,
right?
I've caught Dr. John saying some things that I don't agree with at all. And, everybody has their own different life experiences, and that's why they go after things the way they do. That's why their explanations are what they are. And, I may or may not agree. Just like you said, I'm going to give the guy the benefit of a doubt. He might have a crazy wife that is going out and spending all this money. I listened to a podcast the other day, and the husband had spent $80,000 on webcam girls.
Yeah, that was another Daloney show.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's segue into that.
Well, I am.
Yeah, okay.
I just did.
Keep going,
it
John.
was smooth.
Keep
Thank
going.
you, Tara.
All right.
But the premise is the guy had control of all the money, but the guy spent it on sounds like a lot of it on credit cards, and it's so if somebody has the money, they have to be trustworthy, they have to be honest. You never asked how much money do we have. You were, again, inexperienced. We were just living our lives. You had a bunch of turmoil going on, and part of the reason why I didn't endorse you getting a job or doing something like that, and you could have if you really wanted to, but you needed to deal with stuff. It's not always good to just bury everything and keep yourself busy. There are people want to stay busy for many reasons, but the reason to have a job and the reason to stay busy should not be that you want to forget about bad things in your life. It should be that you want to become something, do something with your time that is productive. And so I didn't endorse you working at that time.
I think it could have been helpful, particularly at the times where, the paychecks from your business were real hit or miss.
Mm-hmm.
And I attended a tax seminar online once, and it's geared towards entrepreneurs, investors, and so forth, and how to manage your taxes. And he recommended, it's kind of just like a side note, if you're an entrepreneur and you're in a couples relationship, the other couple should have a job. Even if you're a realtor, entrepreneur, one of you, it's a best bet to have a regular 9-to-5 job with insurance and so forth, and the other one be the crazy entrepreneur. Because to have that steady income, and I if you're geared that way, especially, I would recommend that also, because it is. I think most people, and I try not to compare us to hypothetical other people, but it was extremely challenging. Finances and life can be hard enough, but in entrepreneurial endeavors, it can be really volatile, especially at the beginning when you're trying to get established. So again, I think that scenario is very different from, we're going on to the second scenario where this guy apparently spent $80,000 on webcam girls. And first of all, holy crap, you have $80,000 to spend on that.
Evidently not if it's on credit cards.
Well, so the ex-wife called in. She's like, I can't, it's been a couple years and I can't get over this. I'm so angry.
They were divorced at that point too.
Right. And
Yeah.
she's like, I lost the house. I had to, buy a new house myself. I don't think it had been 2 years yet. And she's like, I had to pay $15,000 in his credit cards, and he got the house, and he gets the kid 50% of the time. And
Which is justified.
yeah, if
The child.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But she was just angry, and you know, understandably so. But you know, I don't know what kind of house she purchased, but
I
she was
wonder
able
how
to.
angry she would have been if she had gotten the house and was able to push her ex out of her child's life. Because to me, the way she was talking sounded like she just wanted to rip everything away from him because she felt he ripped everything away from her. So it was
Yeah,
more vengeance that she was angry about. She didn't get her vengeance.
that could be.
And that's a very sad state of existence when people think like that.
Well, and I think Dr. John points it out poignantly that, you know, in a couple scenarios similar to that, and episodes where people are just beside themselves because the other person turned their world upside down, right? The actions of the other person turned their world upside down. And so really, you know, if you're able to, she was able to buy her own house within a year, paid off $15,000 of his credit cards. Doesn't sound like money was like, she wasn't on the street is what I'm saying. You know, she
No,
wasn't living with her
no.
mom, you know? And so, yeah, I think that indicates more that there is that kind of vengeance that
And Dr. John went on to ask her, basically, he kind of said, why are you so angry at yourself? You know, are you angry because you didn't see it coming, or you didn't acknowledge the things that were happening that were indications, or, you know, and as a psychologist, that's what they do. You know, you got to turn it back in on yourself because that's where the core of the problem is.
you can only deal with yourself.
You can
know?
only change things for yourself. You can only change yourself. And that's how you get out of feeling like you want to be busy all the time because you got problems. That's you got to deal with yourself. And that's, you know, part of our history too. So,
You dealt with yourself?
and you dealt with yourself.
All right, is that enough about money today?
That's
Should
enough.
we-
That's probably enough money.
Not a money seminar.
How to deal with it. You know, we went through ups and downs in our conversations, and you know, I think that everybody needs to figure themselves out. Like you said, you watched this guy who was a
He's a
advisor to
he's a tax.
Can you-
Oops,
can you access-
not yet.
tax advisor, that kind of thing.
He's a CPA attorney.
But I don't think even
attorney.
I you know, everybody's going to be where they're. So here's my philosophy. A little bit of philosophy.
Yeah.
You are where you're at because of the decisions you've made, and you are where you're at because you've decided to stay there. Everyone's going to be where they're at the time they're there, and if they make different decisions in the future, they'll be in a different place. And I think giving people advice like, yes, you should have a job, so you have insurance, and so you have this, and so you have that. You know, there are societal standards, and that's fine. Those standards aren't for everybody, and people need to decide for themselves, and they need to accept responsibility for everything that happens to them, everything they can't do, everything they can do, their positives and their negatives. And if you don't train for martial arts, if you don't train MMA and you go into the UFC and you go to fight, you're going to get hurt. And if you don't have never ridden a bike and you get on a downhill mountain bike course and you just go for it, you're going to get hurt. So, you know, you can stay away from the things in life that you don't know how to do. You don't have to know how to do everything. And usually when people give advice or they say something like that, guys, if somebody's not doing it, it's because they don't know how, or they don't want to, and, you know, because they chose something else, or they're lazy, or, you know.
Well, I guess I think there are times, especially when a person or a couple is like, what do I do in this scenario? Or I'm just getting started. What would you recommend? You know, you've gone to mentors of yours and asked, you know, maybe not quite in that way, but, you know, I saw it, you know, I was taking a seminar, and this is someone who's probably seen a number of couples, you know, and new couples, because there were a number of couples in the seminar actually. And I think it was just like words of wisdom kind of thing. Probably seen, I mean, money and sex life is like the biggest thing that Or that
One of the
divide
things
couples?
one of the things I could not communicate early on because I didn't know this, but something I know about myself is I would not have been as functional as if you had a job and you had to be accountable to something outside of our home. And this is probably true for a lot of men out there. I would not have been as accountable to our life or as functional in our life because I would have come home, you would have been at work, you would have had to work a Saturday, I'd have been off all Saturday, or I helped our life become something that worked extremely well for me and worked well for us. No matter what the complaints were, it worked extremely well. Our relationship became better, our bond became stronger, our understanding of each other became better. All of the things that people get divorced over, we worked through. And other than cheating, there was no cheating. We didn't have to work through any kind of those, no infidelity, no abuse, none of that kind of stuff. We've never had to work through that people get, like I said, people get divorced over. But there's a lot of things people get divorced over money. People get divorced over too much time together because they find out they don't like each other. We've spent an immense amount of time together. And in our 24 years, we have 100 years of time practically, because we literally have spent 4 times more time with each other than most couples do. And I have valued that. I am very grateful for that. Like I said, I wouldn't have done the things I've done. It would have been a lot different for me. So it's really difficult to look back and go, well, I would have done it differently, because it would have had a completely different outcome. Most times people look back and they say hindsight is 2020. So they're looking back to go, oh, if I had made that move instead of this move, I would have made an extra $1 million. You don't know that. You don't know that extra million could have put you out of business and you would have never continued, or you would have had totally different experiences and you would have never came up with this idea or done that deal with somebody else or moved on to this, or even had the struggles that you are supposed to go through. They might have been different, but so when people ask me for advice, it's extremely practical. I go, well, it looks like what you're doing right now is what you want to do. So there are phalanges on your life that you need to cut off. The phalanges are fingers, right? There are parts of your life that don't fit with how your philosophy is in the way you do things. So that looks to me like the way you are and the way you want to do things. So cut everything else off. That's what I do. That's how I give advice, right? I had a guy call me one time crying. He was an employee of mine, and his wife had caught him in the shower talking to another woman on the phone, doing some sexting video stuff. And he was in the shower, so he was obviously showing himself to the other lady. And he called me crying, and I said, file for divorce today. And he's like, what? And I said, you need to, first of all, shut up. Stop crying. You were in the shower while your wife was in your house on the phone with another woman. You obviously do not want to be with your wife. I love her. No, you're in desperation mode right now. Whatever she supplies to you, she is threatening to rip away. And that is, you're fearing that loss, and so I said, file for divorce today, move on, and never bring this up to me again.
No one's taken you up on that yet, have they?
Never. Never.
Yeah.
They've never done it. They've never gotten divorced. And I'm like, you're literally breaking the covenant of your marriage. Literally in your own house while your wife is at home. You wanted to get caught, you want to get divorced, but you want her to do it, and then you get to be the victim and suffer and cry to everybody like you're crying to me. You can't cry to me. You cannot cry to me and tell me how bad you're suffering when you just made a decision to suffer. So, yeah, So, well, it's like ephemeral advice to me is just that. It's just ephemeral. It's just, you can't grasp it. You can't do anything
So
with
cut
it.
off your phalanges.
Cut off the phalanges that are on the outside of what you're doing because they're dragging you down, right? You need to be aerodynamic. You don't
You're
want
a
to,
knuckle dragger? Is that what you're
well,
saying?
put your hand out the car window like this when you're going down the road and you feel the resistance of the wind, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you had a whole bunch of hands on the outside of your car, it would be very slow because it would be catching the wind.
Yeah.
And so once you start cutting off all those things and making your position aerodynamic, so to speak,
Yeah. Cut the drag.
cut off the drag. I mean, yeah, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
You know, what is that swimmer, that male swimmer, Leah Thomas, right? If he just cut off that thing that's dragging between his legs, he'd be a much faster swimmer.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have to be because he's swimming against women. So
Swimming against
there's
women.
my political commentary for the day.
Women against women.
Women against women. It's what we all fantasize about.
Not even going against the grain. It's just swimming against women.
All right, you have something else?
Oh, there's so much more on that, but I think.
Well, that's 40 minutes. Why don't we cut it?
Oh, entirely?
Yeah.
That wasn't our entire recording for sure.
Oh, okay, you got
No.
something else.
Well, yeah, there's
Oh,
other
you
things.
have another short?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she's searching for shorts now. I could pick out some shorts. Find some booty shorts. That.
Yeah, well, we already did some Daloney stuff. I texted you another one from the late, great Kevin Samuels.
Oh, no. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, you texted it to me?
Yeah, because so then you can
right.
pull it up.
All right. So do you got any messages for anybody while I'm pulling this up?
So there's also
Oh, no.
another, this is not a,
Christians. Did you know
What?
there's a biblical solution to
it just keeps popping up.
What are you
with
listening to
stuff.
Christian stuff for?
It was actually a commercial, but there's all this stuff about alpha, beta, delta, gamma, sigma, whatever, you know, like, are you an alpha this? Are you a beta that? So in this commercial break, while John is getting queuing
I'm
up,
every man. It's all in
so I
me.
found this video that is sigma female, the rarest female on Earth. So do we get into that, or I know you have opinions on, it hasn't arrived yet?
Nope.
Opinions on just this typing. I think we naturally gravitate towards this typing, even just relating back to archetypes, but they've kind of made it a little bit more.
I'm one that doesn't like labels. I've joked about it in the past. I'm like, oh wow, finally I'm an alpha male. You know, I don't like labels. I don't even like the archetypes. I don't like, you know, I mean, there are lots of things I like. I like fantasy, sci-fi movies, that kind of stuff. You know, like Marvel movie kind of things. And hold on one second.
Or maybe we end on this.
How old are you? Yeah. So it's a Kevin Samuels, which is a classic. Boy, I wish he was still alive.
So yeah, I say the late great. He
was
really gave
phenomenal.
some, I think, very straightforward, and I think a little bit of straightforward advice, and I think a little background is important. So from what I understand, he was like a style consultant to men, and maybe worked, you know, at a boutique, or I guess maybe imagine like a men's boutique where they're getting fitted for suits and all
Yeah.
their stuff like that. I'm making that up. I just imagining, but I remember him saying that was his but he has quite a previous career, I think, in like chemical engineering and sales, and so a lot of experience in sales. And
Very articulate, intelligent dude.
right.
Oh, so let's play it.
Well, no, but so he found that as men were coming in and getting styled, right, and
Yeah.
fitted, that they would talk about their relationship problems. And so that was his foray apparently into
Doing this kind of work.
right.
Yeah.
31.
And your ex-husband did what?
He's a doctor. He's a psychiatrist.
And how long ago were you married?
Up until 3 years ago.
How much older was your husband than you?
We'll say 35 years.
So it's 53.
Currently, yes.
Why'd y'all divorce?
My husband got sick with cancer, and that changed him, and it changed the dynamics of our marriage.
Is he in remission?
Yes, he is.
And who filed for divorce?
I did.
Why?
He became mentally, emotionally, and financially abusive.
He took care of you just fine up until he got sick.
Correct.
And then when he was fighting for his life, you became a snowflake. Did you have to work when you were married?
No, but I
No,
chose
you didn't have to. No. You chose, but you didn't pay no real bills. You didn't have no skills. Knock it off. I'm gonna be honest, ma'am. This is a whole mess. So even the way you're talking, it just sounds like, ugh. And how tall are you?
I'm 5'4",
How much do you weigh?
180.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
Okay, Tara, what do you think about
Yeah,
that?
well, Kevin Samuels is known for being very straight to the point and opinionated, and is along the lines of, if you're, you have a time limit as a woman, you have a height and weight limit ratio as a woman.
For finding your optimal life situation
Yeah.
with a man. Yeah,
Right.
I would agree with that.
So, so obviously there's a lot more to get into, but let's just assume that, yeah, she was like, so that is common, that people, when you get really sick, no matter the disease, you do change. And it doesn't mean necessarily that the person won't come back, but, even with your incident you had with basically your colon rupture, if it may be
Transverse colon, I had a bruise from a mountain biking accident, and it turned into a kind of a release bubble kind of on the side, because the tissue got damaged and then expanded and then narrowed down to a small, like a balloon, right? And then when the balloon burst, there was a small hole in my transverse colon.
there was infection.
There was infection in my abdomen, all that, yeah. And I almost died, and it was 6 months to a real recovery, because I had to have a little drain tube put in to make sure all the infection came out if there was any more. And I went on a healing journey, and I healed, and I'm still healing. I'm not 100% yet, but they told me that they haven't seen, I should have died, and they haven't seen anybody heal a hole in their colon, but I have no tube and I have no problem down there. And so
did not have surgery.
I did not have surgery, no.
And so I thought this one would be interesting. I actually didn't watch the whole thing, didn't know his commentary at the end, but that maybe is for another day as well. But that having had our experience, right? And you were not financially, emotionally abusive in any way, but nonetheless, it was a struggle. And no matter what, you're still going to go through likely financial, you'll have to figure out, even if it's dealing with insurance, if someone's sick. And
Oh, by the way, we don't have insurance.
that's a topic for another day as well. And then, but someone emotionally, like you just didn't have your full mental faculties for a while, which, neither of us could
6
really
or 7
tell.
months. And
Right.
an infection inside your body does a lot to you.
Right. And so I would have liked to hear more about, he does get straight to the point anyways. When you hear his episodes, it is pretty straight to the point. But, she wasn't like, I tried counseling, I reached out to our pastor, I reached out to, our family, to help bring things together.
Well,
to
here's
work on
the
things.
bottom line. A lot of people do not have the capacity to handle trauma or tragedy in life. And that the ability to deal with those things comes from a deeper place. And that's why I joked about you listening to Christian things, but there is, turning to a higher power and understanding things at a deeper level leads to people being able to deal with deeper problems. And so I did say that I agreed with him about an optimal time. Now that's if a woman wants to have children, and that's if a woman wants to be with somebody, a partner for a long time. I married you when, I bumped the table. I married you when you were 19 and, 18, and you were 9 days from 19. And so that was an optimal time for you to find a life partner and to go through your continuing formative years, because they all say, the science says the brain doesn't form until a certain age fully. And and lock in that you are going to be with me for the rest of your life. And that's what I kind of agree with. You know, I don't think everybody's ready to get married at 19 either, you know. And but if we look at history, people used to get married at 14, and it wasn't always a 14-year-old girl marrying a dirty old 50-year-old man. You know, not that a 50-year-old guy is dirty, but you know, that's the way they portray it. You know, that's the way common vernacular portrays it. Oh yeah, back then when women were abused and you know, all that kind of stuff. And so I do agree with Kevin on a ton of stuff. He's very dismissive because he needed a shock value being online, and he needed the ability to move the conversation along and hit some high points and he was also trying to shock his callers into realizing things, right? Realizing that they're making mistakes, realizing they're being foolish, especially most of them. You know, that lady, you know, I'm 5'6", I'm 180. She's basically round. And he's like, yeah, you're not going to get married to another doctor, you know, because now you're older, you've been married, and you're out of shape, literally. And well, I mean, you are a shape. You might be in a different shape, but he was shocking them into realizations, which he would do it for, I mean, people got to go watch him, because he would do it for even a long time. And these women would keep throwing up these barriers to their own realizations.
And he wasn't always like upfront and rude. Like he
No,
would
he'd talk to somebody.
He would be very polite in the beginning, and then if a woman or a person,
If she got snarky, then he was mean.
Then he's
Yeah.
like, you know, I'm giving you a warning. If you're going to be like this, I'm going to be like this
Oh,
back.
he'd even hang up on people. He'd just say goodbye. You know, you don't get to talk to me. This is free advice. He also had you know, if you want consulting, you're going to pay me. I will give you as much free advice as I deem necessary here. But at some point, I'm cutting you off, because especially if you're not listening. If somebody would listen and realize right away, he'd keep pouring out to him, you know, and he'd be like, wow, you know, it's great that you admit that, you know, and you know, if you do things this way, if you just realize, look in the mirror, realize who you are, what you are, where you're at in life, and then act accordingly. You know, you're not walking out of McDonald's and at 45 years old and working at McDonald's and dating Jay-Z. You know, you're not going to be married to Brad Pitt because you're a dog groomer at Petco and you weigh, you know, and you weigh 180 pounds.
So you just mentioned the word realization a couple times, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of times just simply breaking down a word can be so amazing, because the first part of that word is real.
Yeah, be real. Be real with yourself.
And that's what I think has been vilified these days, is looking at reality. And, you know, it seems like, yeah, people can see things differently, but, you know, going back to Kevin, or even the Dr. Jon Daloney show, you know, they're calling in for a free service. You know, they are participating in media.
Yeah, in the show.
In the show.
That's how those guys make money.
Right. But you're assuming that you're calling in for realization, right? You're calling in for a reason. You know, if you didn't appreciate or respect that person to a certain degree, why would you call in?
I think honestly, most of the women that called in wanted him to abuse them. The way that he does it, most people would call it abuse, and they'd be like, well, I'm gonna confront him. I'm gonna do, but I think they wanted that. They wanted a strong man to put them in their place. And that's not technically abuse, but I think they were longing for that, because I think a lot of the women, especially in the Black community, they find men weaker than them because they go to the dominant position so quickly and so strongly. And the men aren't being weak. The men are just getting along long enough to get out of the situation. You know, if you take somebody out on a date and they go to this dominant position really fast, even a guy, you're literally a little bit scared. You're like, you know, what's going to happen to me here? Is this person going to claim I did something to them because they're just totally dominating me? you know, and
Well, and he would talk about that a fair amount as well, about the culture dynamic.
yeah. So go watch him.
Yeah.
Kevin Samuels. Kevin Samuels on YouTube. He's all over
Yeah.
the place.
May he rest in peace. So
Yeah.
he's probably
He's laughing it up. He gets it now. He gets it all now. All right. Well, that's the Jon and Tara podcast for today. Like, subscribe, share with your friends if you care to, and send in any comments or questions. We love them all.
Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.